Welcome to Dirt, Sweat, and Gears, and I have got to get a proper camera. But in the meantime, we are with my 1999 Jeep Wrangler. Now, if you tuned into my last video, you see that I started a very simple project with my Prelude that did not end up so simple. Before we get into the Jeep, let's do a quick walk around of the Prelude and see what I ended up getting myself into. So it all started out about a week ago. I had a little leak coming out of my distributor O-ring. And so I thought, well, I just did one of these jobs a week ago. So I thought I'd pull it off and replace it, and everything would be fine. I thought my hoses were still good, but my hoses were very much not. I had oil leaking down onto the weird T-junction, just like my friend's car, my friend Alex's car. And I'll show you this weird T-junction here, and you'll see why it's weird. This is why it's weird. The third generation Prelude is one of the most complex hose systems of any Honda. So the weird T-junction connects right here to the thermostat housing, or the back of it, just behind it. It runs down into looks like the water main down there. It also goes off into the intake system for some reason. I can't imagine why. I guess the intake, I guess this is like the Prelude's intercooler or something. I don't know. Don't ask me why. It just it makes the air intake hotter, which is great. Defeats the purpose of a cold air intake. But whatever. But anyway, so that project is well on its way. I got the hoses pulled, and I'm waiting on the heater hoses, or one of the heater hoses, so I can put this side of the motor back together. Now on this side, I figured while I'm waiting for parts over here, I'll go take care of some things with the alternator. And the alternator, well, I got it all sorted out. What happened was first my belt was too long, the alternator belt, but also the bolt that adjusts the tension, the eye that the bolt goes through, like the little through bolt, it was flipped upside down, so it was going in at an awkward angle. So I switched that, I fixed that, but then I stripped the bolt coming into the top of the alternator, because the belt is pretty tight. I got a belt one size smaller than what I had before, because the old belt was significantly too big. Now this belt is just barely too small. So great. I can't win on that one. But since I'm waiting for parts, I decided, well, I pulled off this intake, and this intake doesn't have the carb sticker, so I thought I would get an intake with the carb sticker, which is going to mean relocating the battery to the trunk, because that's where it's going to put the filter. And so that's something I've been convincing myself to do for a long time, and I figured, well, since I've got the fenders pulled off, I may as well. Well, I had one fender pulled off, and I had the bumper cover pulled off already. I thought I may as well run a new cable, power cable, relocate the battery to the trunk. I bought a battery bracket. It should be arriving today or tomorrow. I got new fuses. I'm actually going to put a fuse on either end, just so that I can charge and discharge the capacitor and have the battery, the rest of the car, on a separate fuse. On the inside of the car, I did surprisingly little work compared to how much I thought I was going to do. I only had to pull out one seat and pull the carpet back in order to move this cable, and I can pretty much get at anything else that I want to refactor back here. I was missing a couple of bolts. I filled those in. Ran the new cable, but didn't run it to the battery yet, because I don't have a battery tray. I figured out where I want to place it, and pulled some wires, and had a lot of fun. Moving on to the trunk, I pulled out my subwoofers just because I'm going to need to pull all of this out, because since I'm in here, I may as well find a new home for all of these wires. It does not make sense for these wires to be there. But that's about where I'm probably going to put the battery box and mount the battery, just because it's close to the capacitor, and I can clean those wires up while I'm in there. And moving on to the other side, the reason why I had the bumper cover off was so that I could take the driver's side fender off. And I needed to do that to get to the bolts for the door hinges. And now, one of the things I did is I actually fixed the door to be much better. So you see on the outside it lines up pretty well. But one of the things I hadn't done yet was I actually hadn't sat in the car to figure out how it actually feels on the inside. Now, I'm not going to know if it's going to trap me in until I get the power working and the door cylinder fires and, you know, locks the door and all that. But let's just close the door. It is just so much more satisfying. It opens really smoothly. It has a little bit of a squeak, but it's an old car. But the door, the thud from this big heavy door is just so good. And then lock, unlock. It actually locks and unlocks. Feels a little smoother, I think. But the most important thing is that the latch does not catch on the strike. So the strike is nice and smooth. It's right where it needs to be. And I think my days of being trapped in this car when I park it are over. I think. But since I'm still waiting on some parts for the Prelude, I got to take care of a few things on the Jeep. Now, my wife has to take a driving test in the next couple of weeks, and in order to do that, they do an inspection on the vehicle before the test. Now, that means my Jeep has to be legal, and to my surprise, well, not really to my surprise, but there are a few things that I had to fix on this Jeep, like, for one, the back bumper. Turns out it's illegal to not have a back bumper. Now, I've been driving this thing for 10 years. Maybe they consider the tow hitch a bumper, but I don't want to take that risk. Typically with a DMV, it really is any opportunity they have to fail you, they're going to take it. So I don't want to give them the opportunity to do that. Another thing I just did was I took it down for smog. It passed just fine. The next thing I have to do is replace the windshield, and I also have to mount a license plate on the front bumper. Now, I did buy an original front bumper, but I really don't like it. So we're gonna keep the front bumper that's on here. I also don't like it, but I can't afford to buy the one I want. So we're gonna work on the one that I have and put the license plate on it so that it is legal and will pass at the DMV. Here's the bumper that I got the other day. It's just an original stock replacement. I had to get bolts for it, and I just found out that it is missing the screws on this plastic here, but that's not a big deal. I can put that on after I get the bumper on the car. I had to buy nuts for these bolts. These bolts are actually in underneath the tow hitch, so I actually have to pull out the bolts in the tow hitch, and then I can put the stock bumper back on without those plastics. Then I mount it up, and then I should be able to just put the plastics back on and I'm good to go. This should be a fairly straightforward operation. I remember putting the tow hitch on. It was not a big deal. Taking the old bumper off was only a problem because it was really bent. I took it off because the Jeep was rear-ended, and that's actually how I ended up with this thing. So I got it mocked up here. The bolts lined up just fine. Everything went in just perfectly. I'm just, from an aesthetics perspective, really doesn't change much. I still have this weird, ugly-ass gap between the bumper and the body. I don't know, maybe it looks a little better. Definitely looks like I tried to be legal, so that's all that I really care about right now. at least until I can afford something nicer. But yeah, easy peasy. It's one of the things I like about this Jeep, is that it's really easy to work on. And another interesting thing about owning a Jeep is that everybody you run into that owns a Jeep wants to talk to you about Jeeps. It's kind of cool. You know, the person I bought the bumper from was telling me stories about how he had one just like this. I mean, obviously he had one just like this. He sold me a bumper for this. But, you know, he had some nice stories. The guy that did Smog, I go to a shop that they're all Jeep guys. I think they're just a generic shop. They just happen to be Jeep enthusiasts, which is why I took my Jeep down there. He had a lot of really cool things to say, and it's just really neat. So there it is. I got it all tightened down. Actually, yeah, lousy lighting. Actually, it looks better without the plastics on the side because it's not blocking the tires. So I'm going to leave it just the way it is. I don't intend for this to be a permanent solution to my back bumper situation, but it will get my wife through her driving test. And one thing you're probably wondering is why is she taking a driving test? Is she a little old for that? And well, yeah, my wife is 40. She's been driving stick manual for 20 years, but that's not really the issue here. The issue is that she's from Mexico and she's getting her driver's license for the first time. So in order to do that, you got to take the test just like if you were 16 years old, which is pretty lame, but it is what it is, and we got to make this thing legal for her. Now, my situation, I really wanted to put the license plate here, but my situation is that I don't have a drill bit long enough to make it through both sides. Now, I could try to drill through on one side and just kind of hope that I make it through on the other side. I can meet in the middle, but I just don't think I'm that good. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do about this license plate. So I still have some time. I'm going to think on it. I would really like to get it on that corner, though. I think it would look great, or as good as it's going to look. But I just have to rethink my mounting situation. I might maybe I'll do some hose clamp situation where I do like a ring clamp around the bumper and maybe do it that way. But I gotta get the hardware for that, so that will probably be done in the next video. Thank you for watching.